Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. This is a special webinar for our AIWD members, so we appreciate you joining this afternoon. My name is Emily Walton Robinson, and I will be working behind the scenes. Your host today for the webinar is Howard Cooper. I believe many of you may have met him while we were at the trade show at the conference. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's 1:01. We'll give it a few minutes, but we're going to open up the phone line. Since this is a Q&A call, I'm going to unmute your lines during the call so you guys can ask questions if you like. So definitely please feel to ask questions. So in order to ask a question, if you're calling in by telephone, please press *6 to mute or unmute yourself, and that will allow us to hear you. Or if you dialed in and you're connected via your computer, you need to add in your audio PIN number, and it's in the email that you received, or you also can find it on the little control panel that's on your screen directly below the dial-in number and the access code. So that will enable you to be able to ask questions. All right, and then also there's a little chat box that you can also type in questions directly, and then I can see them and answer them and make Howard aware that you guys have a question behind the scenes. Also, this webinar will be recorded for replay and will be available for you to listen to in the next day or two. So I will send that via email, and then you'll have access to the replay. But at the moment, we'd like to have your full attention and be as interactive as possible. And I am now going to turn it over to Howard Cooper, our B2B expert, and he will take it from there.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Howard Cooper. I had the opportunity to meet a lot of you. Thank you, Emily. I have about 20 questions or so that have been asked of us and to us by many AIWD members. So what we basically have done is put it all into a slideshow to go through those questions, hopefully answering any outstanding questions that you all have. As Emily said, I am going to keep this as an open forum. I'm going to begin, going through the questions and giving you the answers. And every so often, I'm going to hesitate for a second and just say, does anybody have any, questions, or should I continue? Let me go ahead and get started. We have about 45 minutes or so to get through all this. I'm assuming we should have enough time. First and foremost, even before I get into this, what I want to do, Emily, can you put a poll question up? The folks that are listening, if you could answer the poll, we just want to identify how you're processing today. If you're using a credit card terminal, an ERP system, a virtual terminal, one of those. So if you'd be kind enough to quickly answer this poll question for me, that'll give me an idea of how I direct some of the answers to the questions.
Yeah.
And if you could just remember, if you could mute your phones when you are not talking, that would be great, but I do want to keep this open.
So
okay, just a couple more moments.
Yep. Okay.
And go for it, Emily. Okay, well, this is good. So everyone's using a physical terminal. Terrific. All right. Well, that will help me guide some of these answers. Okay, first and foremost, what we have done with Ron Weldon is we have worked out a special rate, special deal for everybody. The entire group gets the same rate structure and same cost structure, whether you are the smallest or the largest member. We have basically priced the entire group as one entity. Everybody will be paying cost plus 10 basis points, which is 0.001% over cost. And we're putting everyone on a wholesale platform, which is called interchange pass-through. If you need our technology, okay, which the technology part of it automates the level 2 and 3 processing, there's an additional cost of 10 basis points. What I can tell you is we've done analysis on many members so far, and we're 100%. Everyone we've actually done the analysis on, there's a savings on the bottom line, and in some cases it's a fair amount. So yes, everyone does have a special rate. Your rates are guaranteed never to increase, so the piece that we are charging you will never go up. That's our guarantee, and that's what we've negotiated with your group. The next question is, we've learned we have a retail account. Is it hard to switch? The term, and we go intermingle retail and wholesale accounts, there's a difference. And typically the difference in wholesale processing and retail processing is when you're processing on a retail platform, you don't have the opportunity to even send more information through. You only know what you know. You've been passing the basic data, which is fine. But unfortunately, on a retail platform, you never have the opportunity to pass additional data that gets you to a less expensive rate structure. On a wholesale platform, and that's what we're going to be putting everybody on, we are going to be able to pass and collect more data from you, and that's basically not changing much of what you're doing today. You're still going to use the same credit card terminal, assuming we support it. It's not proprietary. But ultimately, when we do this, we're able to collect more information and then qualify your transactions at a cheaper rate. So in layman's terms, there's not much more you have to do today. When we put you on a wholesale platform, we're taking you off of a retail platform, which allows you to pass more data. That's all that is. And we have built the technology to do this with no additional cost on your side. In other words, you don't have to sign up for the, for a special platform. That's how we built our platform on a wholesale B2B platform. The next question I have, and we had this a couple times, is do I have to sign a personal guarantee? And I'm going to cover actually the next two questions, which is Social Security number and my identity being verified. Anytime when you sign up for a merchant services account, in most cases, the merchant services organization is going to ask you to personally guarantee the account. In our world and with the organization, you do not. We are not going to ask for a personal guarantee, nor are we going to ask for your Social Security number. Whoever the signer is on your account simply has to give us a copy of a driver's license, and we will verify the identity of the individual signing by the driver's license. This is atypical. In most merchant services situations, most of the banks want the Social Security number of the signer and a personal guarantee. And in our world, we don't need that, nor do we want that. We want the entity to take responsibility for the account. So ultimately what this means is, if you were to move over to us, the entity, the organization that you work for, takes responsibility for the merchant services account, not an individual. That is a fundamental difference in wholesale processing compared to retail. All right, let me stop there. Does anybody have any questions so far on just these few answers that I've given?
One question did come through, Howard, and the question was, we have a virtual terminal also, but most of our transactions are on the physical one.
Okay.
But what was it, Bree? This was your question. Was there anything else you wanted to add on that? It said, but she said basically they have the virtual terminal, but most of the transactions are on the physical one.
And
right. I just wanted to make sure that because everybody else said they had physical, so I just wanted to make sure that something was also said about the virtual.
Gotcha. Yeah, and using, just so you know, a virtual, and we supply you with a virtual terminal as well. We can do the exact same thing. If the virtual terminal you're on is agnostic to anybody, in other words, we can support it, we just repoint it to us, and it'll be easy. But if you want to stay on a virtual terminal and it's not agnostic, it's proprietary to who you're using, we're likely going to put you onto a virtual terminal that you can use with us and everybody else too, God forbid if you don't like us. So okay. But we'll be able to support that as well. Okay, the next question here is, how long does it take to get my money? And this is obviously based upon when I batch out on a Monday, when do I get my funds? We have two programs. If you are predominantly swiped, which a lot of you have swiped a lot of your transactions, We have a program which is next day funding that you can sign up for. And next day funding means you get your money in the next day. Okay, not everyone will qualify for this. There's a couple different pieces involved. From an underwriting standpoint, you have to qualify. If you don't qualify for next day funding, you'll get it the day after. So what is typical in merchant services, when you process on Monday, you see your funds in your bank on Wednesday. Tuesday is Thursday, Wednesday is Friday, etc. So we do have a next day funding program where you get paid on the next morning, and we just simply have to submit a request for that, and there's a qualification. Basically, you have to be financially sound for that to happen. In most cases, what we've seen so far is most of the AIWD members are not having any issue with it, so they're going to get next day funding. The next question is, when are my fees withdrawn? We have, once again, two programs. In your case, everybody for AIWD is getting month-end billing, which means that if you have a day that you have $2,000 in transactions, you're going to see the full deposit of $2,000 into your account. We don't take the fees out until the last day of the month. So there are many merchant services companies that just do what's called net daily discount. We can do it that way, and that means we're taking the fees out as we go. But quite frankly, it's harder to reconcile. We'd rather have you do gross monthly, and that's, as I said, what we've negotiated at no cost for your group. So the fees are withdrawn at the end of the month. How often will my rates go up? And I've heard this a lot. The part that we charge, the 10 basis points and 10 cents, that's guaranteed never to go up, okay? If rates increase, it's because Visa and MasterCard and the issuing banks have raised the interchange rates. I will tell you that in our world, in the B2B world, okay, consumer base goes up a little bit every so often, but B2B rates skyrocket if you're not getting level 2 and 3. I'm going to talk about that here in just a couple minutes. But if you're processing on our platform, what I can tell you is if you are a customer of ours in the last 6 years, the rates have not gone up a penny if you're getting level 2 and 3. It has stayed the same for level 2 and 3 transactions for the last 6 years. Whereas on a retail platform, rates continue to increase. So any one single credit card can fall into 7 or 8 different categories. The categories that we play in are the bottom 3 costs. It's called B2B level 2 and level 3. And that's where our clients are going to be processing the majority of their commercial and business card transactions. Thus, the reason why the rates don't go up very often is because we're managing that for you. One more question before I open it up again. How long is our contract? And is there a fee? Once again, this is something else we've negotiated. There is no long-term contract. Everyone for AIWD will be put on a month-to-month agreement, and there are no cancellation fees. This is something that if you're stuck in a contract right now, we understand it. We're not going to hold anybody hostage. So, and this is something that is standard practice for us. We just don't want to hold anybody hostage. Quite frankly, if we don't deserve your business and we don't prove ourselves every month, you're free to go. We have a 96+% retention rate, so we're doing something right. All right, once again, let me take a break here and open it up for any questions so far. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask based on what I've talked about? I hear crickets. Okay.
Howard, really?
Emily, can you still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Really quickly, wanted to launch another poll. We mentioned level 2, level 3, and for business-to-business merchants, that's really important. So I wanted to ask everyone if they actually knew what level 2, level 3 actually means. So if you guys can quickly answer that and let me know if you know what level 2, level 3 means, and then Howard can go into it in a little bit more detail because it's really relevant for
yep. And then I'll jump to this slide next, and then I'll backtrack. So that's a good idea.
Okay. So if you guys can vote just by answering yes or no on the poll question. All right.
And no, but it's okay. So let me talk about level 2 and 3. And the fact that nobody has heard of this or knows about it is not a surprise. Level 2 and 3 processing are typically for very large companies, and if you don't have access to the wholesale platforms and the organizations that process B2B transactions, you don't get the opportunity. Level 2 and level 3 data.
Screen, I only see the I don't see your screen. I just see the AIWD question. Does everyone see?
Let me go back. Hang on.
Okay, it's coming up. I see your screen with the slides on the side. But that's
okay, so let me go ahead and, not sure why that happened, and when you flip-flop it, I apologize, guys. I love technology. How about now?
Okay, I see it. Go ahead.
Perfect. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. All right, so let's talk about level 2 and 3. The basic data that you put in when you run a credit card, and we call it track data that's on the magnetic stripe, that is level 1 data. That's the card number, expiration date, the CVV code. Sometimes you put in the address or zip code, that kind of stuff. Level 2 data is when you're getting into reporting the tax. Okay, so if it's a taxable transaction, you would enter a tax amount to report it. And then there's a tax indicator that's passed behind the scenes. And then there's a customer ID or PO or invoice number. That's what level 2 is. Level 3, there's 2 types of level 3 data. And that's going to go into this next question here, line item and summary. Okay, line item is when you do an invoice for somebody, okay, you either invoice them on a line item invoice, which line item is everything they purchased, or a summary invoice, which is just summarizing the basic stuff they purchased with numbers and not all the detail. In credit card processing, you can process and pass additional level 3 data, which is either line item or summary. What we have found is 98% of companies out there don't do line item. They do summary invoicing. So what we have built for you, the technology that we have developed, is going to extract the appropriate information. There's only three additional fields. There's nothing more you have to do, but what we're going to do is extract the information from your transaction to pass the data for summary level 3. In layman's terms, it means you're going to get a less expensive rate by making sure you're doing what you're doing today. You may have to put in one additional field of data, which might be well, if it asks for tax, you're going to put in, if you're charging tax, you put a tax amount in. And if you're not, you just simply hit 0 tax. But ultimately, if you can pass that one extra field of data, we're going to be able to save you, in some cases, 0.75% or more on a single transaction. So what we have done is built the mousetrap to pass the additional data for you without you having to do a lot more work. Level 2 and 3 data is synonymous for business corporate purchase card processing. That's what that is. And one of the advantages of using our services is we've automated the process, so you don't have to manually key in 26 fields of data. Nobody does it. No one, quite frankly, it just doesn't make sense. The next question here, using a system that passes dummy line item, there are some companies that will create a dummy line item and pass that through. So let's assume that you're selling, welding tools or something, along those lines, and they create a dummy line item, and you're going to be selling feathers. And you sell feathers on every transaction. I've actually seen this. They created a line item, and the line item they were passing was feathers. Quite frankly, that's not allowed, but there are companies, and I say companies, there are merchant services brokers that do this to get you a better deal, but in the long run, the risk falls back upon you because you're passing garbage. What we are going to be doing is not passing any garbage. We're passing what is only necessary to get credit for level 2 and level 3. Okay, so that talks to the next question. Can I pass a set tax amount? You only pass tax if it's necessary. So the achieving level 2 and 3, we're going to do the work for you. We're just going to make sure your terminal is going to prompt you for whatever is additional. In most cases, it's just going to be an invoice or PO number or something that's going to collect one more field of data. That's it. Any questions on that? And the person that's using the virtual terminal, do you, on your virtual terminal, if you can unmute yourself and answer this one question, do you have a tax field on your virtual terminal that you enter?
Yes.
Okay, and do you ever use that?
No.
Okay, so ultimately a lot of what we're going to end up doing is doing some education as well, just making sure you understand what is necessary and what is not. So that's part of what we're going to do. Okay, the last slide here, let me go backwards. I have 7 more questions. Before I get into this piece, does anybody have any other questions for me before I jump into the last slide?
I don't see any other questions, Howard, but I do want to make sure that Bree understands, and if Bree, if you could unmute yourself, and you understand if you do collect tax, that it's important to input that in your virtual terminal if you're not doing so, and why that's important. I just want to make sure she understands that, you know. And
yeah, well, and the kicker here is, even though there might be tax on there, if she's on a retail platform and she's not even, you know, the company that's processing the data isn't processing it for her, it's useless. That's the other challenge. So it's not just entering the data into your virtual terminal or your credit card terminal. The company that's processing the data actually has to use it and pass it through for you. So it's something we'd love the opportunity. I'm not sure if we're talking to you yet, but we'd love the opportunity to discuss that with you. One of the questions that came in was, we're processing with our bank, is it better to use Sterling? And what I want to do is put in perspective who we are. There are 5,000 companies that sell credit card processing. There's about 3,000 of them are registered, meaning they're registered with Visa and MasterCard. Okay? And there are 8 companies that process all the data. Everything, think of it as a big funnel. Everything flows into 8 companies. We're one of the 8 companies. But basically what we're doing is we're taking out the merchant services piece and giving everyone access to a processor. We're a company that processes the data on our own settlement system. So in most cases, we're less expensive just because we're cutting out the middleman. But because we're putting everyone on a different platform, that's one of the reasons why it's less expensive. The next question is, are swiping credit cards always cheaper? And this is something we get pretty often. And everyone is conditioned to know that, yes, credit card processing is cheaper when you swipe the card. But with the exception of, there are Visa business cards, and this is something we have to do for you, is do a study. There are specific Visa business cards that go to a less expensive rate when you key it in. So everything that you've known about consumer-based processing, in consumer-based processing, it's always cheaper to swipe. But when you're now tossing in business and corporate and commercial cards, some of those cards require more information. And when you don't have the opportunity or you don't put the more information in, the card falls into a more expensive rate. It's something that we will likely do as a client of ours. We're going to do a study in the first 3 months to identify, and this is part of our review process, 30, 60, 90-day review. We're going to review what cards are falling into a more expensive category, and we'll be able to tell you, quite frankly, oftentimes matching up to a specific client of yours, which clients are paying you with the more expensive cards, and if that card needs to be keyed in instead of swiped. So we've, as I said, we're all conditioned. Swiping is better than keying, but in business card processing, it is not an absolute. Every so often, there's an exception to the rule, and we'll make sure you understand what that is. The last few questions here. Can I use a terminal to get level 3? And with our technology, you can. Do I have to pass tax to get level 3? And it's a myth. You do not have to pass tax to get level 3. Level 3 rates are with or without tax. You simply have to report it. So, and that's again something we'll talk about more in depth. When I say report tax, it means don't leave it blank. Okay, put in 0.00 and a tax-exempt indicator if your virtual terminal asks you for that. That's something on our platform we would take care of. But just understand, you don't have to pass tax to get level 3 rates. Do I need to pass the V codes? And I'm talking about the CID number, which is an American Express 4-digit on the front. Visa, MasterCard, Discover is the 3-digit on the back. And believe it or not, that V code, the security code, doesn't save you a penny on your rates. Historically, you've been told that you have to put that in to get the best rates. What it does do, it does reduce risk of chargebacks because you're verifying that the billing zip code matches the billing, the information that they've given you based on what the card issued, or the bank has issued, I should say. So the address verification does, you put in the zip code, it reaches out to the issuing bank and it verifies that the billing zip code they have on file matches what you've entered. And then it's going to give you a code saying yes, it's a match, or no, it's not. But whether it's a match or not, it doesn't affect the interchange rate of the transaction. So on a wholesale platform, it doesn't matter. But we always recommend you do it just in case if somebody wants to charge something back and they're claiming that you didn't have the card in hand and or they didn't give you the appropriate information. The V codes are used for validation purposes, not necessarily for a discount or a break on the cost. Last couple, does adding address help my costs? And the answer on this one is actually no. The numerical value of the address doesn't matter whatsoever. It doesn't give you a better rate. It will act the same as the V codes. Okay, so if the 3-digit code or the zip code is matching, terrific, but the billing address, that numerical value doesn't matter. And then last but not least, and this is the funny one, I can't understand my statement, how do I know I have a good deal? And in merchant services, as you all know, the less you know, the more merchant services companies make. So what we want, what we want to do with everybody is make sure you understand what you're reading. If you truly want to understand everything, we will go through every line item on your statement to explain what is an actual cost. Okay, and this is if you give us your statements from your current processor, we'll go through it with you and tell you what's real and what's garbage, what's a valid cost and what's not. Ultimately, the way you should be calculating what you're being charged is you take everything that you paid and divide it into your total sales, and that's going to give you your effective rate. The effective rate is the best way to identify if you have a good deal or not, because the effective rate cuts out all the garbage, all the minutia in between the lines, and ultimately it's the bottom line cost that everyone cares about. If you're paying more than 2.6, you're paying too much. Quite frankly, if you're paying more than 2.45, you're paying too much. Most of the clients with us are going to be paying sub 2.4. Many of you that you're swiping a lot of your cards and have more consumer-based, you might be as low as 1.8. So most of the ones we've looked at are paying 2.8 to 3.5, and that is just, it's too much. Okay, that's everything I have. Let me go ahead and stop talking for a moment and open up the phones. And what kind of questions can I answer for everybody? Does anybody have any more questions? Are any of you currently talking to us right now or in negotiations?
You can unmute yourself if you're on the phone by pressing *6, or you can click the unmute button on your computer to unmute yourself.
I think we've done a good job, Emily. I don't think anybody has any additional questions.
I do not believe so. I don't see any other questions coming through.
Let me go ahead and I want to give you a phone number. If you need help, if you have any questions, okay, Bridget is the association manager. She's the one that takes all the incoming calls and makes sure they're distributed to the appropriate person. Her number is 888-564-9564, and she's at extension 3025. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us in a half hour with us. Hopefully you've learned a little something, and we look forward to future conversations and future webinars. Emily, thank you very much, and all right, have a great day, everybody. Take care.